This video focuses on the case study of HM and how we link that to the models of memory and often use his case as evidence to support different cases and different theories of memory. Now the PowerPoint is in a little bit more detail than you need to know, but I do summarise it at the end and link it back to the exam so that you can see specifically which bits about HM you need to know. Now, before we go any further, it's important to remember that HM is a case study. Now, a case study involves a detailed investigation of a single individual or small groups of individuals. Now, they may incorporate other aspects of methodology, such as interviews or interviews with the individual, family, friends, medical professions, etc. They will continue for many, many years and often expensive and very time consuming. However, they do often lead to ways of future research. Now, HM is a patient called Henry Molassen, and he had a hippocampus removed bilaterally in 1953 to treat severe epilepsy, and he died in 2008. The surgery successfully cured his epilepsy but left him with severe antegrade amnesia, which means that he could no longer form new episodic memories, but his ability for procedural learning remained intact. The picture of HM on the screen and also an MRI scan from HM on the screen there as well. So Henry Molassen was born in 1926, and at age 10 he started to show signs of epilepsy. At age 15 he had a full seizure and he dropped out of school but later enrolled somewhere else. Now he found in his life he was unable to hold down a job. He lived at home with his parents and found himself increasingly socially isolated. Now, after the surgery, he spent the rest of his life in a workplace for mentally challenged men. In 1980, he moved to a long-term care facility and he died at 82 in 2008. Now, HM's life. So once HM started to suffer from severe epilepsy, he was referred to a neurosurgeon called William Scoville. Now, William Scoville had him on the maximum medication, but it didn't stop his seizures. So 10 years later, Scoville offered an experimental treatment, which was a bilateral mesotemporal lobe resection. After this surgery, HM's seizures reduced, but the side effects of his surgery severely affected HM's memory. HM lost recent memories and he became unable to form new ones. He couldn't recognise hospital staff, he couldn't hold a conversation for longer than a few minutes. His personality was unchanged, as was his above average IQ, and there is later evidence that shows that he was able to acquire new skills. Now, HM's post-op memory. So Scoville and Milner describe HM's surgery and suggest a link between the hippocampus and the ability to remember specific facts and episodes, because it was HM's hippocampus that was damaged during the surgery and his inability to recall specific facts and episodes afterwards, so that's why the link was drawn. They showed that HM has antegrade declarative memory loss. Now, his semantic memory acquired pre-op was normal, but his semantic memory post-op was damaged because he was unable to learn new words. All of this here can be used to support Tulving's theory of semantic long-term memory. Now, HM recalls post-op episodic memories. So, for example, with a picture recognition task, he was able to recall a magazine picture 6 months later. He was able to recognise a few famous people that were not famous before his operation, such as George Bush, but he did spend hours looking at these pictures of these people. He was also able to draw a floor plan of his house that he moved into after his operation, which suggests that his spatial memory, which is linked to the brain areas outside the medial temporal lobe, was intact as well. His short-term memory was unimpaired. So what the problem with HM was that he was unable to convert memories from short-term into long-term memory. Now this bit here is support for the multi-store model because it suggests that the short-term memory and the long-term memory are separate stores. His sensory memory was intact. He was able to acquire new motor skills. There's quite a famous experiment with HM where he had to try and draw a star while looking into a mirror, and as much as he couldn't remember ever doing the task before, he did get progressively better every time that he did the task. Now this here suggests that his procedural memory was intact because he was able to encode new procedural memories, but the fact that he couldn't remember ever doing this test before shows that his episodic memory was damaged, and this again is support for semantic long-term memory theory of memory. Now, the surgery damaged his amygdala as well, so as much as this doesn't link to memory, think about the biological aspects of your course. And the evidence for this is that HM didn't seem to show fear. He reduced his pain perception, and there was no change in the hunger or thirst after a meal. In conclusion, Scoville highly regretted the operation that he did on HM, and he actually called it a tragic mistake. He warned others of the risk to memory involved in bilateral surgery of the hippocampal regions. Now, HM's case study has been studied by more than 100 scientists and has contributed to the knowledge of cognitive neuroscience. If we were to evaluate the use of HM in memory study, then it's a naturally occurring event that we couldn't replicate because of ethics. We obviously can't go and give somebody brain damage in order to then be able to test what aspects of memory were impaired. But it shows us and allows us to study the brain and determine which parts of the brain are responsible for which actions. It also allows us to have in-depth, detailed study over a long period of time, focuses on real experiences in real situations, which is obviously valid. However, the case study of HM lacks generalizability because it's obviously only of one individual, so it's very specific. In this case, it's unethical to try and replicate HM's brain damage in order to test it for reliability. The data gathered can't be applied then to any other case, any other individual, because the data sample is unique. It's a sample of one person. And therefore is quite subjective because it's been analysed by different people, and therefore we cannot specifically use it to build a body of knowledge on top of. Now, possible exam questions about HM. So explain two ways in which the case of HM contributes to our understanding of memory, and explain one strength and one weakness of using case studies of brain damaged patients to inform our understanding of how memory works. Now, if you want to pause the video here and have a go at this PowerPoint should enable you to be able to answer both of these questions. On the next slide, I'm going to look at the mark scheme. So if you have a look at the mark scheme here, it's A01, it's description. So HM had surgical procedure that resulted in no new memories being able to be stored. He could recall everything prior to the surgery but could not encode new memories, which shows us that we have two types of memory, long-term and short-term, so supporting multi-store model. As he could maintain new information, it shows us that the area damage relates to new memories being encoded. It informs us that short-term memories need to be transferred to long-term storage to be able to be retrieved again, so it informs us which specific areas of the brain are likely to relate to memory. In terms of strengths and weaknesses of using case studies of brain damaged patients, we've got deliberate damage to the memory system or brains of human participants is not ethical, and therefore case studies offer a unique insight into how memory works, whilst avoiding ethical issues of invasive investigations. However, the weaknesses, case studies are only based on one person or a small group, therefore resulting memory damage may not be the same for everybody, making the findings less generalizable and less reliable because we can't test them for replication.